back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from September 20th, 2019, and I'm recording this on March 19th, 2020. So, as always, this list is about trying to understand what made these comics hot, trying to see whether or not those factors maintained, how much these comics dropped back or went forward. Just so we all make better decisions when chasing the hot comics of the week or of that time period. This week's list, as always, we're going to be, since we made the switch, we're going to be breaking down the books from both the CBSI Hot Top 10 and from the Key Collector Comic Tom Hot Top 10. So we're going to be looking at both those lists. This week, I think that amounts to 16 or 17 books. So without further ado, let's get into these books, see what we can learn, and go from there. So first up, we're going to talk about our books that are on the list because of option news or that kind of related thing. First up is Raisin Dion, number 1, and this wasn't really option news as much as there was actually a Netflix show coming, and it has come out since then. So there was a Netflix show coming, and the trailer had dropped, so basically this book jumped to an $18 book, and 9.8s were going for $125. But this was on the Comic Tom list, and Tom immediately warned everybody. He's like, you can still buy this book. This is a print-on-demand comic book. So why are people buying? Stop buying this. You can go get it for cover price. And this book is still a print-on-demand cover comic book from Indie Planet. So you can still go buy it for cover price on Indie Planet. But people are still paying $10 to $20 for this thing. Now, 9.8s haven't really sold since that one sold back in the fall, in the early fall. But asking price online for this is $10 to $20. 9.8s are asking like $80. But again, you can go print this. You can order one right now for cover price. Just drives home the point of do your own research. Investigate these things. You don't always have to pay. Don't just pay the eBay price because that's what people are asking. Next up is a book that was on last week's list, and that is Tank Girl number 1. This actually just switched lists this week. So last week one of the groups had it. This week the other list did. This is the same jump in price that we were talking about last week, where it went from basically a $100 book up to $150 because of news that Margot Robbie's production company had got the rights to it. 9.4s basically jumped up to $325. And as we talked about last week, now raws are $60 to $100. A 9.6 recently went for $300. 9.8 went for $7 something. Asking prices on these are quite a bit higher than what they've been selling for still, but this book has definitely settled back as we've gotten away from that news, and nothing more has happened in terms of putting this into production. Those are really our only kind of non-MCU or Warner Brothers DC movie kind of news or TV show spec. So with that, let's move into the covers. And we have a bunch. We have 3 covers this week, I guess, and then we have a ton of comic buzz later. So first up is Spawn 221. This is the AF-15 homage. And there's been a bunch of these late 100, early 200 Spawns that have jumped in value because of their covers or just because of it's a low print section of the Spawn. This one jumped from a $50 book to an $80 to $90 book, and it has kept going. Basically, I shouldn't say it's kept going, but it stayed basically right there. Raws are still 75 to 90. A 9.8 recently went for 150, or 9.8s are going for 150-ish. Asking prices, though, are significantly higher on this. They're asking like 120 plus for raws, but only 160 for a 9.8. So, but you do have to be aware there is a Mexican version of this that goes for significantly cheaper, so you want to make sure you're getting the right one if you're paying for this. But yeah, this book is still right where it was at 6 months ago. It has not dropped off any. So with that, let's move on to another hot cover, and this is Star Wars Age of Resistance, Rey number 1, the Joe Quesada 1 in 50 variant. And out of the gates, this was another one of those hot Star Wars cover, like incentives. These Star Wars incentives, boy, the Star Wars fans love these. They tend to really go up in value. This one was no exception. Right out of the gate, it was going for $100 for 150 or more. Now, there's only been 3 recent sales, and those sales are 4 sales in the 150 to 160ish range. So this book has continued to go up. There's not many of them listed. It's pretty hard to find. There's been one slab sale. So 4 sales in the 150 to 160ish range, and 1 sale of $350 for a raw copy. So someone wasn't doing the research, paid $350 for a raw copy, but we'll get into that, why that happened. 9.8s for this. There's only been 2 slab sales, $320 in November and $180 in February. So someone got a steal at that $180 based on what these have been going for. Because currently there's only 3 listed. A raw for $120. Sorry, I got on the wrong line. So 3 listed. $350 for a raw and $550 both for 9.8. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong line. So the 3 listed currently, $350 for a single raw, and then 2 9.8s listed at $550. And those are the only 3 of this that are listed. This book, I think, is kind of becoming a ghost. It's not a ghost yet, but it appears to be headed down that road. Star Wars fans have kind of latched onto this one, and yeah, they're hard to get, and they're asking a lot for them. So this is one of those Star Wars covers that seems to have not slowed down at all and kept going, which seems to happen way more often with a Star Wars incentive cover than it does with any other incentives. Next up is Absolute Carnage, number 3, the Laraz variant, and this will go with our next book a little bit, and this had to do with there being a Venomized Hulk character design on the cover, and potentially this being the first time there was a Venomized Hulk, getting that a little bit in canon, I guess, or in the MCU, and we'll get into that in a second. And it was this Venomized version was going for $10 to $15 at release. Now it goes for cover price, occasionally 10. A 9.8 recently went for $35. This is not really key in my opinion, but people were jumping on anything related to that Absolute Carnage run, and Hulk Venomized is something they were all about. Now, I said it was kind of the first appearance. Actually, What If number 4, which made our list because of comic buzz, and that is actually the first time we see a Venomized Hulk. It is a What If story. You're debating on whether or not those actually count for first appearances. But because of this cover I just talked about, this book jumped from a dollar bin book to a $15 to $25 book. And now it's a dollar bin book again. So, yeah, people get on these, something they do, Daddy Cates or something with Absolute Carnage. There's been several of these where they jumped on characters, and we'll get into another one in a second, that aren't really keys, and they haven't really had any sustained momentum, and people overpay for these books. Don't want to be that person. Do your research. Understand what's going on. Next up is Captain Marvel, number 21, and this is the first appearance of Big Mother, which was a character that only lasted for like 10 issues, and looked sort of like a symbiote. Well, this hit the list because the solicits for Scream number 2 came out, and there was a cover with Big Mother and Scream on it. So everybody thought, oh, Daddy Cates is going to use this character, and this book jumped from a dollar bin book to a $20 book. This one hasn't crashed all the way back down to dollar bins, but it's basically a cover price book plus shipping, or occasionally there's still a couple people that are paying 10 for it, but really nobody's paying much for this. Although someone did pay $160 for a 9.8, which is the only recent slab sale of this book, but that was way back at the beginning of January, and again, that person really didn't do any research. So that's Captain Marvel number 21. We're going to move on to more comic buzz, and this was Spiderman number 2. Spider-Man 2, number 1, the Tedesco 1 in 50, and this was because there appeared to be some ploy of an evil Miles in this Absolute Carnage. Carnage or somebody taking over Miles and making him evil. And the first time we kind of see this is in this comic book. Raw copies of this 1 in 50 jumped up to $150. 9.8s were going for $400. Now there's only been 4 recent sales of this Raw. They've been 35, 60, 35, and 75. So significant drop from that 150. And there's been no recent slab sales of this. Asking price on this is 40 to 90 raw, and there's only one 9.8 currently listed, and that's for 450. But yeah, this is another one. Wasn't really a key here, and but people were kind of chasing it anyway. Next, our next comic buzz on our list is Spider-Girl, number 59. And this is the first appearance of Benji Parker, which was as a baby, which was basically the son of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, that had the same name as the character that J.J. Abrams and his son were using in their Spider-Man story from the fall. So everybody was like, oh, it's his first appearance. It appears to be a completely different universe, so it's a different version of Benji Parker, even if he has the same name. But either way, people were paying $40 to $80 for this book back in the fall. And now it's a $10 to $20 book. Another one that just didn't have any momentum. I think the story turned out to be good. It wasn't for me, but it turned out to, I think several people liked it. But yeah, it's now a $10 to $20 book. So with that, we're going to move into some Uncanny XMen. And this is still related to House of X and Powers of X. Much like Absolute Carnage, they dominated the fall. And people were going crazy for anything related to these. When Jonathan Hickman put something out, people were jumping all over it. And these next 2 books are Uncanny XMen number 1, both the regular and the Del Auto variant. And these are the first appearance of Gold Balls. And basically he played a prominent role in how the X-Men were being resurrected and kind of came back into the story, and people were jumping all over this. And this, for the regular cover, was a dollar bin book that jumped to 10 to 20. 9.8 we're going for 75. And now it's a cover price book again. So it hasn't dropped all the way back to dollar bins, but it's basically a cover price book now. The Del Auto basically went from a $5 book to a $30 book, and it hasn't fallen off as bad. It's still, well, there's only been one recent sale, so I can't really say that. One person did pay $20 for it, but there's been no other recent sales in the last 3 months. So probably has fallen off more because people aren't willing to pay what it's being listed for, which is around that $20 mark, except for one. Next up on our list is CBSI got tired of putting all the connecting variants from House of X and Powers of X on the list every week, and just said House of X and Powers of X books are really hot. And they were back in the fall. And I think they're still selling. Looking at this, I didn't really look at any individual issues. I looked at the number ones a little bit, but there's so many different covers it was hard to make any kind of judgment. So I just kind of looked at overall sales, and it does appear like there's still a lot of movement on these House of X, Powers of X books, but not nearly. A lot of them you can get for cover price now. Some of the variants are still going for more, but these are definitely come back to earth a little bit as we've moved away from that storyline and gotten into a more standard X-Men stories that are going on now. So if you failed to grab some of these, now might be a good time to go track them down. So next up, we're going to move into the movie news, and we're going to start with a little Warner Brothers movie news, and that is related to the upcoming The Batman movie, and this is Batman The Long Halloween. And this made the list because rumors, according to Kevin Smith, were that this was going to be the basis for the new movie that's coming up, that they've started shooting. We've seen clips for. I find that a little hard to believe. If you've read the story, it would be hard to translate into a movie, and you would need basically all the villains. Almost all of the Batman villains show up and play kind of key roles in this, and we haven't really heard that, so we'll see. But this book jumped from a $25 book to a $50 book raw. 9.8 jumped up to $250 just based on this kind of news. And now it's kind of a $25 to $70 book depending on condition. So it's kind of hanging right in that same, it's down. I mean, the high end's higher than it was back in the fall, but the low end is lower. There's a big spread depending on condition here. 9.8s are still going right in that same range. So I would say this book is pretty much just maintained where it was in the fall after this news. Don't know that we've gotten any more confirmation that this is really the basis for the new movie, but maybe they will take a few story points from it. With that, we have 3 books left, and we're going to move into MCU spec. I know we can't go a week without like 3 or 4 books related to the MCU. First up is Black Knight #1 from 1955, and this is actually an Atlas book. This is pre-Marvel, and this is the original Black Knight. So this is not the same version that Kit Harington is going to be playing, but people were kind of trying to track this down, and this hit the list because a 2.5 went for $1,700, which was a new high for this book. Since then, it's kind of come down a little bit. It's settled in a little bit. Low grade raws recently, there's only been 2 sales, but they went for $500 and $600. Recently, the only slab sale recently was 5.5 CBCS. They went for just under 3,000, like about 27. Asking price on this is even come down a little bit, like a 3.5. They're just asking $1,600, so less than that 2.5 went for. Hard to get really good data from eBay and Go Collect, that kind of stuff on Golden Age books, but there are several of these listed. This one appears to, not sure why people were jumping on it. It's, yes, the Black Knight is a title that's been passed down, but this is not the version that's going to show up. So in the MCU, but this is kind of the first version, so I guess that's why people were jumping on it. Next up, we have Captain Marvel 17. Not that one, the other one. This is the first Phyla-Vell, and basically there was rumors she was going to appear in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and this book jumped to a $25 book from about a $10 book. 9.8s were going for $175, and now it's a $10 to $15 book again, and the 9.8, most recent 9.8 just went for $90. So this one is also cooled off, as there's been no confirmation that she is going to appear, and kind of back into that minor key realm, which is where it was before. Finally, the last book on this week's list is a big one. This is definitely, and this is Fantastic Four, number 48. The first Silver Surfer and first cameo of Galactus. And obviously this has been on the list multiple times over the last few years as people have been specking on Silver Surfer and Galactus coming to the MCU. This was rumors that there would be a Silver Surfer movie. It's going to be how they're going to do a Silver Surfer movie before they do even maybe a Fantastic Four movie. And this caused, and this bothered me a little bit because Tom was like, low grades at 400, mid grades at 16, and a 9.0 at 6,300. And I'm like, well, what low, mid, and mid grades are you talking about? So I kind of just looked. So it's hard to compare what they've done, but what we're seeing is a 2.0 recently went for 600, or had been going for 600 pretty consistently, although the most recent one went for 460. 6.0s are going for that $1,500 to $1,600 range. 9.0 had actually dropped back to 51 to 5,800 with multiple sales in between, but its most recent one actually went for 65. This is just a solid book. It's continued to go up, but it's kind of mostly probably been about the same since the fall, but this book has been slowly creeping up, well, has been leaping up over the last couple of years, and is probably going to continue to slowly creep up until there's an announcement, and then it'll leap again. So, but yeah, this is a big book. So hopefully you bought it about 5 years ago if you really want it. If not, you're going to be paying a lot for it. So that's this week's list. We had a lot of comic news making the list this week, as we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books related to just comic news, which is pretty nice, not just to be completely dominated by option and spec news and that kind of stuff, but most of those haven't done very well, but a few have. So with that, we will call it a week. I will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.